What started as another Hollywood biopic has now turned into something much bigger, because after watching Michael, people aren't just talking about the movie anymore. They're talking about Michael Jackson himself. And, strangely, many viewers are saying the exact same thing, that they now see Michael differently, not because the film revealed some shocking new secret, but because for the first time in years, people felt emotionally connected to him again. And the center of all of this is Jaafar Jackson, because what audiences expected to be a normal acting performance ended up feeling much more personal, much more emotional, and, honestly, a little uncomfortable. Not uncomfortable in a bad way, but uncomfortable because viewers suddenly realized how much emotion they had disconnected from over the years, especially younger audiences. People who didn't grow up during Michael's peak. People who only knew him through headlines, controversies, memes, or internet debates. But after this movie released, something changed, and now the internet is having a completely different conversation, because instead of debating the scandals, people started remembering the human being behind the headlines. And honestly, that may be the biggest thing this film accidentally accomplished, because before the movie even released, most people thought the biggest discussion would be whether Jaafar looked enough like Michael. That was the obsession online. The face, the movements, the voice, the body language. People kept saying the same thing over and over again. How is he this accurate? Old rehearsal clips started resurfacing online. Side-by-side comparisons exploded everywhere. And every time new footage appeared, the reactions became more intense. Some people even admitted the resemblance felt unsettling. Not because it looked fake, but because it looked too real, especially in emotional scenes. Scenes where Michael looked vulnerable, quiet, lonely, exhausted. Those moments hit people differently, because for years, the internet mostly remembered Michael as an icon, a global superstar, a mystery, a controversy. But the film did something unexpected. It slowed everything down, and suddenly, viewers weren't looking at the legend anymore. They were looking at the person. And that's where the conversation began changing. Because one thing people noticed almost immediately after watching the film was how emotional Michael's life actually felt when you remove the headlines and simply watch him as a human being. The pressure, the isolation, the expectations, the constant need to perform, the loneliness behind fame. That emotional side of Michael is what audiences keep talking about now. Not just the dancing, not just the music, not just the celebrity, but the emotion. And strangely, that emotional connection is making people revisit Michael Jackson in a completely different way online. Old interviews are resurfacing again. Old performances are trending again. People are rewatching concert footage. Younger audiences are discovering clips they had never seen before. And perhaps most importantly, people are debating Michael differently now. Because before this movie, most online conversations around Michael Jackson felt divided into extremes. People either defended him completely or criticized him completely. There was rarely any middle ground. But after this film, the discussion became more emotional than argumentative. And that shift is fascinating, because whether people realize it or not, movies have the power to reshape memory. Not facts, not history, but emotional memory. The way people feel about someone. And that may be exactly what happened here. Because Jaafar's performance didn't just imitate Michael. It reminded people what Michael felt like during his peak. That's the difference. A normal impersonation copies appearance. But this performance made people remember emotion. And honestly, that's much harder to do. Especially with someone as globally recognized as Michael Jackson, because audiences already have such a strong image of him in their minds, which is why many people expected the performance to fail. They thought it would feel forced, artificial, overdramatic. But instead, many viewers walked away saying the exact opposite, that the performance felt strangely human, and that's where the emotional side of this conversation really begins. Because, over time, Many celebrities slowly stop feeling human to the public, especially icons. Eventually they become symbols, brands, headlines, internet narratives. And Michael Jackson may be one of the biggest examples of that in entertainment history. At some point, the world stopped seeing him as a person and started seeing him as an idea. And when that happens, people slowly forget the emotional reality behind fame. But this film seems to have reopened that conversation again, especially among viewers who never experienced Michael Jackson in real time, because younger audiences are reacting very differently than older fans. Older fans already remembered the emotion. They remember the interviews, the performances, the public pressure, but younger viewers are discovering all of this for the first time through the movie, and that's why social media reactions have become so interesting. Because instead of only discussing the filmmaking, people are discussing how the movie made them feel about Michael himself. That's a huge difference. And, honestly, that may explain why this film suddenly feels bigger than just entertainment. Because it reopened an emotional connection people didn't expect to feel. Even viewers who entered the movie skeptical admitted something felt different by the end.
I believe that music, we can change the world.
I first heard about this project, I believe I was online and I saw an article that Graham King got the rights to tell the Michael Jackson story. That was the first time I heard of any news regarding the Michael biopic. At that time I was creating music, I was producing a lot, so I didn't have any thoughts of, let me play him. It was more so, that's gonna be interesting. I wonder where they're gonna take that. I got a call from Graham King. He asked if I ever acted before, and I told him no. I've never acted, I never wanted to, but I'm a big fan of films, and I more so want to do film scores. One thing led to the other, and next thing we're having lunch in person, and he's telling me about the story of how he wants to tell Michael's story, and at this time there was no studio attached, there was no director attached. It was very early on. The script wasn't ready yet. He asked, would you be open to acting? Or if I got you with a coach, would you be willing to try it? You might hate it, you might love it. I was like, I need to really think about it before just diving into it. I'm someone who really wants to pull something. No, I don't want to just try it just for fun. If I go into it, I really want to commit to it. So I told him, let me think about it for a couple of days. I didn't really hear back for some time. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to text him a voice note of me speaking as Michael to the best of my ability at that time, and also singing a song or two. I sang a Peter Pan song that Michael, he never sang it officially, but it was more so off the record. I sang it like a lullaby to him, and also just speaking to him in Michael's speaking voice. And he called me right away and said, I'm getting you a coach tomorrow. And that was the starting point of when I really started to try out acting. It was about 2 years, because the first year I was really just working with Angela Gibbs, the coach, on other scenes from films, plays, and then 8 months in, we started to work on specific scenes from the script Michael. And everything was recorded so Graham can see my progression. And then a year and a couple months in, that's when I started working with Rich and Tone, the choreographers that were on the history tour with Michael. So it was like a continuation of many moments. It wasn't just one audition. There was many different moments I had to really show up and pull off the performance, whether it was a dance, singing a song, or a scene. I would say close to 2 years in, they told me they're gonna do a worldwide casting. And that put even more fire inside of me to want to work even harder, double the hours I was already putting in. So I had the time to really do that. And having Havenhurst, which is the home in Encino where Michael lived and where I actually grew up, I went back there and set up a training camp, a way to have a place to really work as long as I want, as hard as I want, as free as I want. That was a turning point for me, to have that space to be able to do that. Having my grandmother really tell me how proud she was and just hug me and say how excellent I was doing, that's all I needed to hear to really give me the confidence to pursue and continue to put in the hours and really work towards what I wanted to achieve. Her opinion really was all I needed to hear. That's really all I wanted to hear.
Not necessarily because the movie changed their opinion completely, but because it reminded them there was a real human being inside one of the most analyzed celebrities in history. And once audiences emotionally reconnect to someone, the public conversation changes. You can already see it happening online. People are sharing old emotional speeches again, old charity moments, old interviews, old performances where Michael looked exhausted or overwhelmed. And suddenly, those clips feel different now, because audiences are no longer only seeing Michael Jackson the icon, they're seeing vulnerability, pressure, isolation, and emotion, which is exactly why so many viewers are saying, people see Michael differently now. But there's another reason this film is affecting audiences emotionally, and it's something many viewers didn't expect. The timing. Because today's internet culture is very different from the world Michael Jackson originally lived in. Today, audiences are more aware of celebrity pressure, mental health, media exploitation, public breakdowns, fame destroying people emotionally. Modern audiences understand those conversations much more deeply now, which means younger viewers are looking back at Michael through a completely different lens than people did years ago. And that changes everything, because certain moments in the film no longer feel like celebrity drama. They feel tragic, they feel isolating, and honestly, for some viewers, they feel painfully relatable. That emotional relatability may be the biggest reason the internet reaction has become so intense, not because audiences suddenly forgot every controversy surrounding Michael Jackson, but because the movie reminded them how emotionally complicated fame can become. And once that emotional complexity enters the conversation, people stop viewing public figures in simple black and white ways. Now, obviously, not everyone agrees on the film. Some viewers believe the movie protected Michael too much. Others believe it humanized him in a necessary way. And that division online is part of why the discussion keeps growing, because controversy creates attention, but emotion creates connection. And this film seems to be generating both at the same time, which is rare, especially for modern celebrity biopics, because most biopics either feel overly polished or emotionally empty.
With the foundation, so I study a lot of the Jackson 5, and then when it became the Jacksons, and just to see really focusing on Michael and how he's feeling in those moments, also creatively what he wanted to express, and that longing for that independence and what that felt like, but also creating as a group and what that brought out. But in particular, it was important for me to understand the human side of Michael and that individual side of him that not a lot of people were familiar with. So that was very exciting for me to dive into. Coming from my own memories of him, there were a few cherishable memories that I have that it was more so the emotions that come out of him, that more so than observing him with his mannerisms and things like that, but the effect he had, you know, if you were to walk in a room and how palpable that was, you'd be able to feel it. But for me, it was really looking into his personal writings, his personal journaling, and that was truly informative to allow me into his mindset of how he was feeling, of what he wanted to achieve, you know, some goals he had written down, and it was such a blessing for me really to have access to that. And then I created this timeline room of so much information that really allowed me to stay grounded in it and not get lost in a way, because I really needed to see it, you know, with my own eyes. And that really informed me even with the script. So I knew where each, you know, timeline was, and I understood what he was feeling. Also, his personal notes allowed me to do that and place it in that time. Some of it was just how he thought like a marketing genius and how he went to be seen, and he really studied that from other greats. And I feel like he incorporated that even with his videos, how a color can draw the audience's attention just by the color of a hat or a glove, or showing his socks a certain amount of inches, and how he was hands-on with everything he created, but also his ability to have that sensitivity of what was going on in the world as well, and how he wanted to help the world through his music and continue that message. What I hope the audiences will feel and understand about this movie, I really hope they want to have a deeper understanding of Michael and a lot of the decisions and choices he made with the music and his artistic freedom, but also a deeper understanding of the family dynamics from the Jackson 5 all the way up until the Bad Tour. And what you see with that is it's a close family that had so much love in there, and while also having Joseph wanting to steer and protect his family. And there were so many different voices and people wanting to come in to to get in that, and Joseph really wanted to protect that as much as he could. And then along comes with that is Michael's ability, or him wanting to have that creative freedom, not being stuck in a box, wanting to reinvent himself. And that's something with Michael that really surprises a lot of people. He would never be allowed to be put in a box. He always wanted to create something that's unexpected and take the audience by surprise.
But this movie created something stranger. It created conversation. And conversation is what keeps movies alive online long after release, especially when the conversation becomes emotional. And honestly, the emotional reaction surrounding Jaafar Jackson may be one of the most surprising parts of all this, because many viewers expected constant comparisons, criticism, pressure. But instead, a large part of the internet seems genuinely shocked by how much emotion he brought into the role, not just visually, emotionally. And that emotional realism is what keeps making viewers uncomfortable in the best possible way, because certain scenes no longer feel like reenactments. They feel personal, almost invasive, like audiences are watching private emotional moments instead of performances.
It's so nice to see you. You look absolutely gorgeous tonight.
Thank you. So do you. I love the brooches.
Thank you so much. I'm kind of a fan of brooches. What is it like tonight to be here to honor your brother?
It's magical. Just to see the love and the people that are here for him, it's so, so magical. And I have to say, he would be so proud and so happy and so honored. So I know he's looking down on all of us.
I love that so much. Have you seen the film?
Yes, I have.
In the film, what was the thing that impressed you the most when you watched it, sort of recreating this beautiful story?
I think what really and truly, honestly impressed me was the fact that Jaafar made you believe and think that it was Mike. And you look at him and you forget that it's Jaafar and you think it's your brother. So I was highly impressed with the work that he put into it and how he delivered it on the screen. So
did you feel emotional watching it?
I cried 3 times.
Really?
Yes.
In what moments of the film did you feel like really feel like you got you?
Seeing the story of your family in the beginning, and my father just making sure he instilled certain work ethics in them and making sure they did everything perfectly. And when you recall those days, it becomes emotional to you. And that's basically what happened, yeah.
That's amazing. So what is it like to be a part of such a legacy like this that is really not just, it's impacted the entire planet, truly, in pop culture? What's it like to be part of that?
I think it's wonderful that Mike had such an impact on the world. And it's funny because when you're a part of the family, you live with this every day, and you see him this way every day. And he had so much more talent to show, and he didn't. And I would always say, Mike, show them this, show them this. He goes, no, give them a little bit at a time.
A little bit at a time. We're going to give to him. Well, thank you so much for being here.
And whether intentional or not, that creates a very powerful viewing experience, especially for longtime Michael Jackson fans. Because for them, this movie isn't just nostalgia, it's emotional memory returning all at once. And you can feel that online right now. People aren't only discussing the accuracy anymore. They're discussing how the movie affected them emotionally afterward. That's when you know a film touched something deeper than entertainment. And perhaps the most interesting part of all this is that the movie may have changed how an entire younger generation emotionally understands Michael Jackson. Not necessarily historically, emotionally. And those are 2 completely different things. History is facts. Emotion is connection. And right now, the emotional connection around Michael Jackson feels stronger online than it has in years, which honestly says a lot about the impact this film is having. Because in today's internet culture, attention disappears fast. But emotional conversations stay alive, especially when audiences feel like they rediscovered someone. And that's exactly what seems to be happening here. People feel like they're rediscovering Michael Jackson all over again. Not the headlines, not the scandals, not the mythology, the humanity. And maybe that's why this movie feels so different from other celebrity biopics. Because it didn't just recreate a public figure, it reminded audiences there was once a real person underneath one of the biggest celebrity identities in history. A person under impossible pressure. A person constantly watched, constantly judged, constantly expected to become larger than life. And, ironically, The movie became strongest whenever it stopped trying to show the icon and instead showed emotional vulnerability, because those moments are what audiences keep remembering after the credits end. Not just the performances, the emotion behind them, and honestly, that may be the real reason people suddenly see Michael Jackson differently after Jaafar, not because the film changed history, but because it changed emotional perspective. It reminded people how complicated fame can become, how lonely celebrity can become, and how easily the human side of public figures gets buried underneath years of headlines and narratives. Now, whether people end up loving this film, criticizing it, or debating it forever online, one thing is becoming very clear. The conversation surrounding Michael Jackson has shifted again, and this time, it feels more emotional than ever. Because audiences aren't only asking whether the movie was accurate, they're asking something much deeper now. Who was Michael Jackson emotionally underneath all of it? And honestly, that may be the biggest reason this film is staying in people's minds long after watching it. Because sometimes a performance doesn't just recreate a person. Sometimes it reopens emotions people forgot they had. And right now, that's exactly what seems to be happening across the internet. But what do you think? Did Jaafar Jackson actually change the way people see Michael Jackson? Or is the internet simply becoming emotional because of nostalgia? Comment your thoughts below. And if you enjoy celebrity stories that go deeper than headlines, make sure you subscribe to Roundtable Celebrity, because here, we don't just watch the story. We break it down. In Script show the emotional side of Michael as well, Jaafar as well, Mixture, totally new script. 2 I have already made, so make like a new one that can gain views. The world thought this movie was going to recreate a legend, but after watching Michael, people started talking about something completely different. Emotion. Because somewhere between the performances, the music, and the perfectly recreated moments, viewers began realizing something uncomfortable. They may have forgotten who Michael Jackson actually was, emotionally. Not the icon, not the headlines, not the controversy, the person. And strangely, the person reminding the internet of that right now is Jaafar Jackson. Because what audiences expected to be another Hollywood impersonation ended up feeling deeply personal, almost too personal. And now people online are saying the same thing.
There he is, the man of the hour,
Nice to meet you.
Jaafar. It's a pleasure to meet you, sir.
Nice to meet you, yeah.
Well, I'll have you say that tonight, every single person I've spoken to, whether it be from the Jackson family or from your family, I should say, has all said that you have just absolutely knocked this out of the park and really captured the essence of Michael. What was it like to take on this role?
It was a lifetime experience, or I should say, a defining moment in my life that I think I won't experience anything like that. Just having that first time experience on a set, but to portray my Uncle Michael, and all the time I put into preparation, then to finally, release it on set in as much as I possibly can, and then to be here and seeing the reaction from everyone, and the fact that there's so many people that came out, I couldn't be happier. I really couldn't be happier.
What was the process like transforming? What was the hardest part? Would you say like the vocals or like the dancing? What was you find the most challenging part of becoming Michael?
There are many different difficult parts about it, but the most was probably I always say the performance of not just doing the moves, but really owning the moves and making it your own, where it feels like it's the foundation is coming from you. Yeah. And that took me a long time, and I still feel, I didn't really nail it like I wanted to in certain things, but in my mind, I always drew to how am I feeling afterwards, or how am I feeling during the performance, and sometimes I wouldn't even realize I did certain things, and that's when I knew, okay, I'm in a flow state, I'm not thinking so much, I'm just allowing the music to dictate what I should do, yeah. Which I know Michael would always say that, so I wanted to strive for that. Yeah.
You were becoming, and I feel like, what would you hope that people get when they watch this film, and they walk out of it feeling like?
Wow. I really hope that the audiences walk away with a true, deeper understanding of Michael, the human being, and to really take in those moments, regardless of the performances and those big, spectacle moments that we were familiar with, but really those moments that we haven't seen, behind closed doors, where if it's just a look he gives, or if it's a quiet moment that really allows you into his psyche, his soul. I hope they leave with a deeper understanding of how he was as a person.
Well, so Graham, the producer of the film, he said he auditioned over 200 Michael's impersonators and stuff, and he said when he sat down and had lunch with you that he knew that you were him. What do you think about you guys meeting up and talking with him that really kind of sealed the deal, if you will?
Well, I know the first meeting in person, he said he felt organically a lot of natural similarities, and I can't personally pinpoint what that was because I'm not looking at my own self. In that meeting, I was just being myself. But from his point of view, he saw something, and at that time, I had no idea what acting was, and that was really the starting point. Like, first, what is acting for me? And if I can tackle that down, then we can have a conversation about Michael.
What do you think? If your uncle was here tonight, what do you think he would think of your performance?
Ooh, that's a hard question. I would hope he would be very proud and can see how much love and work I put into it to get to a level where he would be happy. Yeah, I know he's a perfectionist.
Hey, man, that's what made him so great, man. Oh, what do you think the biggest misconception of your uncle is?
The biggest misconception? That I would say that he wanted to be white. That's a big misconception, and that this film gives you that understanding of what that is, what that vitiligo played a part in his life, and not a lot of people really understand what that is.
Yes.
And he was dealing with that from an early age.
Dude, well, thank you so much, brother. I appreciate you, man, and congrats. Can't wait to see it.
Over and over again. This doesn't feel like acting. But the strange part is, the emotional reaction isn't only about Michael anymore. It's also about Jaafar himself. Because the deeper people look into this film, the more emotional the entire situation becomes. And honestly, that may be why the internet can't stop talking about it. Because beneath the movie, there is another story quietly unfolding. But this movie feels different, because viewers left the theater still thinking emotionally afterward. And when audiences carry emotion after a film ends, that's when conversations become bigger than the movie itself. And honestly, some viewers are even saying the emotional side of Michael Jackson feels more relatable today than ever before. Not because people understand fame, but because people understand emotional pressure now. The pressure to constantly perform, constantly smile, constantly become what the world expects you to be. That emotional exhaustion feels familiar to modern audiences. And perhaps that's why this movie suddenly feels so personal to so many people. Because beneath the celebrity story, there's a deeply human story about isolation. But now, people are discussing sadness, pressure, humanity, and emotional vulnerability. That's a massive shift, especially online. And whether audiences end up loving this movie, criticizing it, or debating it for years, one thing feels undeniable now. People are emotionally seeing Michael Jackson differently again. And maybe that's why this entire situation feels so strange, because nobody expected a biopic to make the internet emotional. But somehow, that's exactly what happened. And honestly, that emotional reaction may end up becoming more important than the film itself. But what do you think? Did Jaafar Jackson truly change the emotional way people see Michael Jackson? Or is the internet simply reconnecting with nostalgia all over again? Comment your thoughts below. And if you enjoy celebrity stories that go deeper than headlines, subscribe to Roundtable Celebrity. Because here, we don't just watch the story, we break it down.